Hi there, I'm Marilyn, CEO and founder of Cosmic Centaurs. And for those of you joining us for the first time, Cosmic Centaurs is an organizational and leadership development firm. For the past 6 years, the Cosmic Conference has been our space to learn out loud and share what we discover with the world. And every year, we choose a theme that reflects the questions that leaders are wrestling with the most. This year, in our conversations with leaders, one theme kept coming up, the topic of systems. Many leaders told us they felt stuck in firefighting mode, solving problems that kept coming back. And what we realized is that this wasn't a failure of strategy, but of the systems they rely on. That is why this year's theme is "The System is the Strategy," helping leaders shift from firefighting to future building. Over the past 6 weeks now, and across 3 tracks, we've been exploring what it means to think in systems, from the foundational tools and methods to real-world examples from leaders who've built systems that scale, innovate, and sustain, all the way to the human and spiritual dimensions that bring heart back into the conversation. Today, we're exploring how leaders can build systems to transform large organizations and ignite human potential. At Roche, systemic transformation isn't just about innovation. It's about redesigning the very way the organization learns, adapts, and grows. When leaders shift from managing change to designing the conditions for change, transformation becomes continuous, not episodic. And that is exactly what Breeze will talk to us about today, how to imagine large systems so they can evolve, scale, and sustain impact over time. No stranger to the Cosmic Conference, our guest, Chun Feng Breeze Dong, is an Associate Director of Organizational Development at Roche. She first spoke to us about systems thinking at our 2022 conference. In her role, Breeze leads large-scale learning and transformation initiatives, reimagining operating models and building AI-enabled, future-ready leadership capabilities across global teams. She is also the founder of Spring Breeze Ventures, a leadership development and coaching practice that helps leaders and organizations cultivate resilience, agility, and purpose-driven growth. Breeze brings together the analytical and the human, drawing on her background in engineering, sustainability, and psychology to design systems where people and organizations can truly thrive. Breeze, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Marilyn. And hi, everyone. It's an honor to come and have a discussion about system is the strategy. And when Marilyn, when you mentioned this topic to me, I feel really excited and really appreciate, the mindset of thinking more holistically in our line of work. So really happy to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you with us because you're one of the few people I know who can talk to us about how this happens at the scale of the organization that you're in. And so, Breeze, you've kindly prepared a presentation for us. I'm going to let you take the lead on that. I will invite our audience to share their questions. I'm going to stick around and join in the conversation, be it with my own questions or with the questions that we see from the audience. I'm sure we will have a lot to cover. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to you and then join the conversation.
Thank you, Marilyn. And feel free to, bring up your questions and, just have a discussion really. So today, I guess really the stage is for sharing, some of my experience in Roche, a large organization, using system thinking to sort of reimagine the operating model in serving our purpose. And what I will do is I will just maybe use the next 15, 20 minutes to sort of tell the story and share our experience. Really, we are still on a learning journey. And this is why such an environment is really helpful for us to really learn together. I guess this is what we call one of the key philosophies that we are holding is learning organization. And in this process, one of the main sort of belief we have is sensing and responding, and always taking a more emergent approach. Emergent meaning like really sensing what's going on and decide what we're going to respond. Yeah. So as you can see in this topic, so maybe let me just start by sharing a little bit of why why did we start a sort of initiative like this? The challenge with the environment that I'm in is a commercial arm of Roche Pharmaceuticals. So this is a 13,000 employee organization operating in over 140 countries. Well, to enable the organization to sort of really thrive in today and future market, one of our key sort of purpose is to double the innovation and really reduce at a reduced social cost. So to achieve this, the challenge really is how do we enable innovation and collaboration so that we can achieve the double patient benefit with less social cost. And to do that, the philosophy is that in today's world, we no longer think in a linear term. So we call reductionism. Like you really think, and reductionism means basically like an engineer, like how we take the whole into parts and design the parts in the hope to predict the future. So what we see is as the 13,000 organization, we are more like a living system, and in this living system, it's really more an organism interacting with each other, collaborating with different parts. So the holistic thinking and leveraging points is the key for us to enable the system to evolve. Yeah. So essentially, that what you see here is don't fix the parts, evolve the whole. And one of my fundamental belief is that until we change the system, until we evolve the system, nothing really changes. We often hear, this famous quote famous number from McKinsey that 70% or maybe even more percent of change initiative fail. Why is that? In my belief and in my experience, is that when we only change the parts and still, the system still reward the old thinking, you're actually pulling the system back to, still back to this command and control and more hierarchical thinking, right? So essentially, the challenge what we see here is to, go beyond reductionism. I'll go quickly, and then maybe we have more of a conversation. So as I mentioned, as we started this initiative, we didn't just jump off saying, "Oh, we want to make change 1, 2, 3." We wanted to understand what's really the reality right now. And for this, we conducted a diagnosis exercise, identified what are the key leverage points in the system, and then we based on this sense and response philosophy, designed programs. And essentially, these slides actually were from the award like a draft, because we won 2 Brandon Hall Gold Awards for social collaborative learning. And in this process, essentially, as I tell the story, it felt like I knew, like we knew what we are doing, like everything seemed so smooth. But in fact, when I look back, and I actually, writing these slides was also a great opportunity for me to reflect. Essentially, when we entered, like when we started this diagnosis exercise, the organizational network analysis, we really didn't know what might this initiative look like. We are really sensing into the organization what is the reality, and guided by the belief that this, we trust that the system has its wisdom, that when we make things visible, we will know how what kind of intervention would be more helpful. So in 2020, we together with some of my colleagues, we conducted the organizational network analysis, covering thousands of colleagues. Essentially, it's a survey understanding what's the collaborative landscape. We found out actually only 5% of collaboration across the 89 markets are, it is visible. And we, at that time, we only have a rather fragile hub and spoke model that, the headquarters still remained as a key part of, sharing best practices, giving guidances, etc., which is not really the most optimum way for collaboration. So what we found out, from this exercise, we then understood, wow, what if we could find out the leveraging points, so that, essentially you triggering those points to create greater impact. And we identified these two main leverage points of cultural values and relationship dynamics. I will explain a bit more. So what we call, inevitably in this conversation, I might mention some words that might not be of quite familiar, but if this is not clear, we can explain later. What I mean by leveraging point is really in a system theory, those elements that could, if we leverage them, that could create greater, or if I may say, more exponential impact. So these are the things that we think are the most important elements that we should act on. So here, the two actions you can see. One is we identified 8% of from our 13,000 employees as cultural carriers. And cultural carriers, meaning these are the people who other people trust to, get advice, share their expertise. So these are the people who are essentially more powerful or impactful compared to the average employee. So this 8%. The other action we did was, from these organizational network analysis, we then created 2 self-organized small working teams to interview 300 of those cultural carriers, to identify what are the behavioral patterns that, created their impact and their success, and what are the traits, beliefs, mindsets that we could learn, and maybe also help them to, disseminate and support the system. So we co-created 6 simple principles to guide the adaptive and emergent change. Let me see. Yes, so here are the 6 principles. So really, in 15-20 minutes, I guess, really, I won't be able to go into much detail. Essentially, what we did, and Marilyn, we were just talking about Brene Brown before we started the conversation. It is like grounded research. So basically, those 2 teams, we have interviewed the 300 cultural carriers. We were really just listening to their stories. So how come they are so impactful that their customers really love them, their colleagues trust them, and they are creating this impact? What kind of beliefs, behavioral patterns, mindsets are they holding? And from these 300 stories, we then created these 6 principles that we were using to guide our next step actions. So now you can see, first is we prioritize work based on outcome and impact on patients and customers, internal or external. So it is not about output, whatever you do, it is about outcome and impact. And second, we empower people to choose the work and how they contribute to it based on their skills, purpose, and intended development, independent of their job description, function, or location, right? So these are essentially, really, it's about the making visible the skills and purpose, and create the condition. So number 3, we make transparent to everyone the outcomes and the progress. And 4, we make transparent to everyone people's skills, intended development, and current contribution. So these 2, you can see, transparent is really a big highlighted word, because that's what we believe when we make make things transparent, this is already the condition that we create for the system to start learning from each other, to start disseminate the wisdom, and to start generating more emergence sort of interventions. And number 5, we intentionally include diverse perspectives in every working team. And number 6, we recognize and incentivize individuals and teams that connect, contribute, and energize cross internal and external networks to address patients and customer needs. So here you can see, I guess, in the next few slides, we'll talk about the impact that we created. Essentially, one of the key, I would say, success over the last few years was the fluidity that we created across the whole network of 13,000 people, and in those working teams, the diversity and actually the cross-border collaboration are really key elements. Yeah. So here you see the 6 principles. Yes, and here I guess that's one of the last slides already. Then we can start the conversation. So we say this is a gardener's approach, right? So it's not the engineer approach. As a gardener's approach, what we did is really cultivating the conditions. So it's really allowing the system to grow. So we have 3 interventions. First is strengthen the network of cultural carriers. So for them to actually get closer, for them to be more aware of their, let's say, the qualities that they hold, and for them to help them to become mentors of the system. And second intervention is to create the opportunity marketplace in order to, first create the transparency of skills so that those skills, the skill and the needed outcome sort of projects can match. Yeah. And third is fostering a learning culture, like a learning organization, so that the organization, adopts this philosophy to always evolve and learn. So as you can see, it's really from reductionist thinking to more holistic thinking, from really parts to relationships, and from fixing what is wrong in a sense, to actually creating conditions. It's really like a gardener. Yeah. Here, so some signals of progress over the 2 years is that these. So this is we in late 2022 and 23 we did another network analysis. So we were able to see the difference of those interventions. What we saw was that previously we saw only 5% of collaboration across boundaries. Then 2 years later, we saw stronger collaboration, and 52% of collaboration occurs beyond boundaries. And we also saw 5 times more innovation through network activation. In terms of talent fluidity, we have 4,500 employees. That's 35% of the whole population. Formed over 900 self-organized teams. We call it work packages, based on outcome-focused work across the boundaries. And then finally we see the transparency. So the transparency essentially is, the foundation of the opportunity marketplace. And we saw a skill visibility rose from 4% to 70% in major markets over the 2 years. So that's really in a nutshell of what has happened in this, in this more emergent and system sort of based approach. I guess that's here. Think like a gardener, not as an engineer. Let's have a conversation. So I guess, in reflection, as I sort of briefly reviewed the journey I have been through, I guess the one thing is really the appreciation of sort of trusting, trusting that we have things we don't know that we don't know, but still trusting that we will be able to find out find out the wisdom. I guess that's maybe this is a bit abstract, Marilyn, because in the end, when I was thinking about 4 years ago, I would not have imagined that we have came this far, trusting the systems approach. And now I have a lot of trust, and that, I must say, also guided my personal journey of sort of looking into the future, because there are so many unknowns, right, in this world. Yeah, so that's really some nuggets so far, and let's have some conversation, Marilyn.
Yeah, we have questions in the audience, and I have a lot of questions.
Sure.
I mean, I'm going to summarize this. I'm going to reframe it, which is to say, like, you didn't know what the answer would be, but you sought out to fix what you could see as symptoms, right? So you're saying not enough collaboration, not enough people being leveraged through their entire skills, and so on and so forth. And so you set out on this exploration. We'll talk a little bit later about, the practicalities of what does it mean to enable the system. But first and foremost, this is very resource intensive. And I'm sure that you had backing or support from the business side to do this. Otherwise, it could feel like what those crazy people over there are doing. Explain to me how the business understood this effort. Was the CEO behind it? How did you garner the right political support to then be able to go and deploy your time and your resources in what inevitably has led to incredible results, but that did require a bit of patience?
Thank you. Yeah, great question. Right to the point. And the first thing that came to my mind as I hear you is this is not just a fancy experiment. It's actually aimed at achieving our business ambition of doubling the patient benefit and reduce social cost. And the reason why we do it is because with the existing resource, and there are some sensitive numbers that I didn't mention, is that 4 years ago, 80% of our revenue come from 4 products. But actually over the past years, those product portfolio increased to over 20, right? So with the existing structure of sales, it will not be able to, it's not possible to actually fulfill the business ambition. So this is a very much a strategic exercise of how do we enable and really vitalize and energize the system so that we could achieve the business outcome. And of course, ultimately, the patient benefit, right? So to start with, we have, I feel we actually have a very clear understanding from the business leader's side that this is a essential essential exercise that we need to do in order for our organization to evolve. And there wasn't I wouldn't say of course the CEO of the Pharma International Organization, I would say, really host great leadership quality to understand that this business challenge really requires a fundamental different approach of the organization. So we really need to fundamentally reimagine the operating model so that we use the current number of resources to achieve the goal that is really exponential, I would say. And I must say in this presentation, I didn't mention that much about leadership development, but that was really an essential philosophy. In Roche, one leadership philosophy that I appreciate a lot is what we call VACC. It's visionary, architect, catalyst, and coach. And if you hear these four words, this is really, I would say, qualities for a complex world, I would say, because these are all qualities for leaders to actually foster a system. And in this journey, my presentation is really more focused on, let's say, system thinking and large scale transformation. In the background of it, there's a lot of leadership effort that we also, my colleagues and the CEO of the organization, put a lot of resource, financial resource, and also a general kind of, intense sort of conversations to support the leadership across the board, to sort of come together. Does that sort of
Yeah,
start
absolutely.
answering the question?
I think it's the fact that you had to double the patient outcomes really begs for you to find leverage points. Because if we go back to the fundamental of what is a leverage point, it's the ability to exercise less energy to move the same or to move more.
Yeah.
And so I had this question, but I also saw it in the audience. You talked to us a little bit about kind of this research effort, the survey, the interviews that you conducted.
Mhm.
And you mentioned identifying these leverage points. How would you say you arrived to them? How did you know that these were the ones that you were
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
activate?
this is I would say it's really more of a sense and response exercise. So it's through the grounded research of the 300 people. So in this network analysis, we were able to identify those. We were able to name them, and we were able to actually draw the network map. It literally looked like a like really complex network map, and we know the people. So we basically selected the top 300 and two self-organized small design teams, so eight people in each team, took on the task of interviewing all the 300 of them. And then from the 300 stories, like it's then really more of an emergent process of what could be a leverage point. And that's how we arrived at those interventions. In the slide, as you can see, basically, strengthen the network of cultural carriers, create opportunity marketplace, and fostering learning, a learning culture. Because as you see, all these three things are the number one is the strengthening the network of cultural carriers is we believe this is really like the bundle of wisdom. Yeah. So when we strengthen them, we can actually get their wisdom disseminate to the organization, and they will learn from each other, and they will build on each other's ideas, and they will be able to create the impact. Yeah. Number two is actually create a more opportunity marketplace, is to create the condition for this wisdom to disseminate. Yeah. And for that, as you remember, we actually made skills visible from 4% to 70%, because that's really the condition for those skills to be matched to outcomes. Yeah. And number three, the learning culture is actually the fundamental culture that's weaved in the whole organization, because there are so many new things that we need to work on. And imagine 900 work packages. These are small teams formed of maybe 6-9 people from across the globe. So a lot of new things, we need that learning organization, right? So if I now when I look at this, when I talk about this, it sounded like great. These, sounds great. When we were at that point, it really came from experiences from those cultural carriers, because they did that in a smaller scale, of course. Right. I guess that's really the beauty of the system, because I define my role in a way as a catalyst. I did not invent all of them. I did not, or me and my colleague Emerson Pace, we were really close in partnering, working in this topic. We did not invent much of this. That's really the wisdom that's already practiced somewhere in the system, but in much smaller and much less visible scale. What we did was we created the condition to actually help those cultural carriers to gain more visibility and help to disseminate and really spread the wisdom. And we basically created the conditions, the structures for this to happen. And there's another thing I want you to comment on. You mentioned resource intense. This was actually not that resource intense. Let's face it, compared to this very expensive leadership offsite that you typically could spend tens of thousands of dollars per day, the cost of the organizational network analysis, and the cost of actually the financial cost of creating, let's say, programs like this, because it's also really quite minimum, because we were able to rely on digital platforms, and also we also introduced mentor approach and peer coaching approach, enabled by digital platforms. This is actually, I would say, relatively speaking to the typical leadership development resource spend, very small portion.
Oh, that's really interesting, actually. I really want to resonate with something. You already said it. I just want to repeat it because I think it's such a beautiful point, which is that in viable systems, there is already so much wisdom to extract. And sometimes it is just sufficient that we just separate the weeds a bit, are able to extract these jewels, and then just put a bit of shine on them, let them spread a bit more of their wisdom. Sometimes that's all we need to do. We don't need, as leaders, to be inventors. We don't need to be engineers. We don't need to be architects. We don't need to come up with the solutions. We need to be the catalysts of those solutions. And you gave us some examples, and there's a question from the audience about what does a gardener look like on a day-to-day basis. You gave us examples of updating your leadership principles and doing a lot of work on kind of the leadership development side. You gave us the principles and some ideas about these work packages, I think, as you call them, like the different teams that come together. What are other practices that you say emerged from this experiment that you can share with us? What were some of the tangible things that allowed you to garden, as you say?
Yeah. Well, the gardener, I mean, I guess you touched upon some key elements of sort of the gardener's job, right? One thing I think is creating the container, because by creating the container, I mean creating a psychologically safe and sort of open environment for this type of work to happen. So inevitably, there's quite a lot of sort of leadership conversation with senior leaders that needs to happen, that gain the understanding and support. So that's kind of, we have that container. A lot of, I mean, I sort of mentioned quite a bit already. I guess another thing that I probably did not mention so much is learning from the outside also. That we know that there's a lot of wisdom that's already in the system, and yet we are essentially, I'm as a full-time employee, I realize my mind is actually shaped by the organizational culture as well. So I guess another part of the gardener's job is also to sort of maybe think out of the box a little bit, to learn from what could be possible, and to see what could that mean for us. So that may be something a bit new. I guess, if you want to be more specific, I can be a little bit more specific of what a gardener would mean. But I would say VACC is actually a really, really good summary of the qualities. Visionary, architect, catalyst, and coach. So a lot of my job is indeed these 4 words: visionary, architect, catalyst, and coach.
Yes, I really loved it when I read about these, actually, because I think they're really about creating leaders that build systems around them and leverage the systems around them to create more and more impact. I thought that was very well aligned with the systems thinking approach. I guess maybe a question from the audience here is, how do you allow this emergence to occur without falling back into control? Because inevitably there will be situations, pressure, KPIs, whatever, something happens in the market that trigger us as leaders. As much as we want to hold space and live up to the VACC values and leadership behaviors, there will be days where we fall back below the line. How do you support the system with that effort?
Yeah, this is indeed a really thoughtful question. I mean, this is a journey of, what I shared just now. It was really a journey of 3-4 years, right? So what happened very early on was actually to celebrate successes. And one of the initiatives that I now thought of, of course, this initiative evolved over time, was that our team, we actually gathered leadership team of 3 countries to come together in a forum. And we call that forum in different names, but that's basically a country CEO and CEO minus 1 of 3 countries coming together. And they come together on with a shared a business outcome that they want to, a challenge that we want to solve. And they go through a 3-day experience, 3-day or 4-day experience. And in this experience, there were definitely a lot of celebrations of what has happened that really worked. Well, of course, also a lot of sharing, what didn't work. And in this process, what we found out was it's really a beautiful experience. It's not always very rosy. So I facilitated many of them. And that's also part of my sensing exercise to understand what's going on, right? So to answer your question about, to how do you make sure not falling back? Sometimes we do fall back. We're just human beings, and that's okay. And I guess what we did from very early on was to gather people together to celebrate, to share their experience of pain. And then when we share, we realize, oh, we are not alone. Actually, a lot of people face similar challenges. And in this experience, typically people would find sort of they are then more grounded. And in this exercise, in this experience of 4 days, at least when I facilitate, a lot of the exercise was actually there's a lot of inward looking of yourself as the leader. What is your personal purpose, your North Star? What is your country's organization's purpose and business outcome that you want to fulfill? And how, from your heart, from your grounded reality, how will you respond? I'm also a meditation teacher, so I'm kind of taking that opportunity of doing some mindfulness exercise, despite it's mostly virtual. I find when we invite people to come together and to ground, to really come to their purpose, and to really reflect on the stories of patients in their country, beautiful things happen. They would come to their senses in the end, and they will know what to do. So I guess to answer your question, this is at least one intervention that we did. And of course, we encourage also leaders to seek coaching, and there's internal coaching offered to support them, to support leaders take care of their own well-being. Because I guess the deep belief we hold is only when you are well and when you are balanced, when you are grounded, you can then lead and you can actually support others. So and my experience in general is that when leaders can come to their center, their core, they are able to make they're able to discern what they want to do. And of course, business targets is really always the the central theme, and that's perfect right in this journey. Yeah,
I really love what you're saying. I think a lot of what we've discovered, this is also why I love that the conference is so long, because then I get to learn over 7 weeks and discover things. I don't have to compress everything into 1 or 2 days.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what we've learned, whether it was in the leaders circles that we facilitated ourselves or in some of the conversations, is really that it is so essential for leaders to be able to start with transforming and creating space within themselves before they can engage in being able to do that sustainably with the system. And this every place we go, it's like we're being given a mirror, and it says, you are where the change begins. And
Mhm.
so you have to begin with yourself. And I really resonate with what you said around their groundedness, their heart, their
Mhm.
own personal purpose, and then being able to figure out how that connects
Mhm.
to a bigger picture. Um, how do you talk to leaders about finding the energy that is required for them to do all of this? Because I always say this is a very energetic process.
Mhm.
It requires that we are in a good place. You said taking care of our own well-being. How do you guide leaders through, first of all, the reflection on where they can find sources of energy for themselves?
Mhm. Mhm. Beautiful question. So actually, there's another intervention, well, let's say initiative that we did in the organizational network analysis. We did ask this question. We asked people, what brings you energy? What keeps you going? Because especially for those cultural carriers, for those people who are like creating this impact, we are really curious. At that time when we asked the question, it's really genuinely with curiosity. And one thing that people answered was the clarity of my personal purpose and the clarity of my business outcome. And what we did then was to say, wow, if people are, if this is what energizes people, why don't we actually create the condition for more people to experience this? So we then, based on this experience, initiated a peer coaching experience of guided question on their personal purpose. So essentially, it's like you have a scheduling system, you have a matching system, and the matching basically is on, you know, your statement, other people's statement, and then you have some certain connectivity based on the digital platform. You guys match people who generally don't know each other, and you are asked 3 questions each time, and you meet over 12 weeks, like every 2 weeks or so, and have a conversation. It's a conversation space. So to answer your question, at least one of the initiatives that we did is to create conversation space for people to explore and come back to their purpose. And this is based on peer coaching. So that's one thing that we did. Another thing that indeed the idea it came from sort of many stories from leadership teams across the globe, is stories from patients, like real life stories. I know that in some countries, they organize like patient day. So over one day, they invite various patients to physically come to their office and share their stories. I even saw tears. I had tears when I attended one. When I listened to a story. That I find is actually a really sort of it's I guess it's more of an emotional or spiritual energy, because I realize when doing the work, I I see how the impact is it's changing other people's lives. And when I hear this story with my own ears, that energy is sort of really like a source of energy that's blossom that's sort of coming out. So that is another source, I would say, um, that in various forms, bringing the let's say bringing the purpose to life, and you know inviting people to hear this story and to connect with their own purpose.
I think
Yeah.
that's really incredible. I always tell my team, because of the nature of what we do, I'm the frontliner of the company, even though I'm the CEO, because a lot of our interactions,
Mhm.
if we are talking to the CEO of the company, typically I'll be the one doing it. And I'm the first person to see the impact of our work.
Yeah.
I'm not removed from it. I'm really at the front lines, and
Yeah.
it does really drive me. And I always try to bring that back to them. And what you just said,
Mhm.
he ignited that for me, and trying to think about how I will do that more mindfully to make sure that they see the impact of their work, because I get to see it oftentimes more than they do. So that's really
Oh,
beautiful.
beautiful. Yeah, it's a beautiful reflection. I guess, once read an article from Harvard Business Review many years ago. It's called "Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time." And in this article, the author, this is also a research project, and they define three type of energy, right? Your physical energy, your emotional energy, how you collaborate, how you have belonging and psychological safety, and the spiritual energy. So it's your purpose. Are you doing meaningful work? Do you feel that your work is fulfilling your purpose? And these three levels of energy really stuck with me, of how I am looking at my day, of looking at the energy sources. And I feel I feel actually really grateful, over the last few years, with colleagues who I work with, also a lot of leaders who I worked with. I feel it's really a nourishing journey to see the meaningful work and to touch. I used to say, the heart to heart connection, because this is really how I feel energized, seeing this the meaningful work is created. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. I have to ask you this question because it has come up so many times, and it's a bit different from the conversation we've been having so far. But you speak a lot about these human-centered systems in a lot of your work and your writing. And a question from the audience from Matt, and I had it too, because we can't not talk about what's happening in the world, is how will this evolve in the world of AI? I don't know if you've spent much time thinking about it. I always tell my team not to worry about our jobs, because what we take care of is the humans, not so much the task. But I wonder if, what is your perspective, whether it's optimistic or not, around how AI is going to enable you to do even more of the work that you do today, or if it's going to be a hurdle towards it?
Well, I'm definitely in this camp of being more optimistic, that that it's there are many beautiful technology, I would say, to enable such work, and especially when the work is at scale. AI really, I mean, there's so many examples that I probably wouldn't even able to name all of them. And I feel that really, I mean, what I would imagine is to free up more creativity, for, like, if I take myself as an example of a catalyst, and AI has helped me incredibly of being more efficient, right? And in that sense, I use AI rather more as a sort of assistant companion, and the time and energy that I can free up, it's really more of a creative time. So that I feel this is for people like me doing this type of work. I really feel it could bring immense potential. But of course, at the same time, just being more conscious of how we, like, being more discerning of, like, how we are using it. And I'm not a data expert, so I essentially sort of I like to explore new things, and I'm quite curious in exploring new things. Just also being more conscious of how we are using it, the accuracy of the data. So generally, the models that we are using, it is sort of it is within the company's boundary. So we are not using the open, sort of the open AI system. So everything, including, let's say, the peer coaching platform, etc. There's AI element, but that's all the research data that we fed in. So it's more of a controlled optimism of this approach. And I love to think, essentially, for me personally, it's probably a lot of unknown. That means I don't know what I don't know. Essentially, with the topic of AI, I'm having a very open mind. I'm trying a lot of new things, but I'm also realize I have a lot of unknowns, and in that sense, this essentially triggers me to come even deeper in grounding myself. So in the world of touching base, essentially, because I know there will be so many new technologies coming up that is sort of, wow, flashing in front of my eyes. I am more paying attention with the time that I have in cultivating my capability, my ability to discern, and my creative force, so that when time comes and when the conditions comes, I would be able to pick up the right thing for the right time for the right people. And before that, I rather relax and not worry, because essentially, I mean, that's essentially anticipatory anxiety would happen, because like, wow, if you see what AI can do. But then, I guess, until that day comes, I rather get more ready and be more centered to
I
choose.
love that. I am right there with you. I'm definitely a stoic and I don't worry about things until they happen. But I love this idea of like, how do you prepare
Mm.
and of developing discernment, of grounding yourself further in what makes you truly unique and human, your creativity, your heart, your purpose. Like, I just think it's such a beautiful way of responding to this problem and an extremely non-anxiety causing perspective, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I guess that's also partially because I do meditation for decades, uh, 2 decades, well, not two, 15 years or so. And I guess the one thing that I learned from this experience is, like, really being in the moment. And that's really all that we have, right? And in this moment. And I realize when I'm really grounded and being more mindful in the moment, I am also the most creative. And the impact that I create is often the best. So, better than if I worry about it 3 days before and then, think about it 3 days after. So I realized, wow, that's a unique human quality, right? And that's no AI can sort of replicate, because
mm,
I guess that's probably fundamentally when we talk about this question, we are experiencing right now, even sort of in a hidden way, the AI is developing so fast. We're probably on the verge, on the sort of on the dawn of the big revolution, or big sort of social revolution, changes. And
mhm.
in that case, I guess, really is coming back to the unique human quality, as you mentioned. Yeah. So that's kind of my philosophy.
I love it. Now,
You-
also trusting that the system will find its way forward. I don't know that they're comparable because cloning wasn't in the hands of so many people, but I always think back to how well we dealt with cloning, as a species. And I'm like, we will figure this out. We're good
Mm.
people.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
don't like to ascribe to the dystopian futures because if I do that, then what's the point? And so
yeah, yeah.
I
Really
really
coming back to the
appreciate.
moment. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Mm.
Reese, believe it or not, it's been almost an hour. I felt like this passed in a minute. But before we close, I want to maybe extract some final nuggets of wisdom. And I have three closing questions that we've been asking every one of our speakers
Mhm. Sure.
to answer for us. If you're ready, I'll start us off with our final question.
Sure.
So the first question I have for you is, to complete my sentence, an effective system is.
An effective system is,
Mhm.
um,
What's a quality of an effective system?
effective system is, um, somehow the first word come to my mind is relaxed. So
Love it.
it's yeah.
Yeah, not under duress. I understand. I think that, I mean, if anything, this represents who you are very beautifully. So,
Well, I guess it's relaxed, um, but also focused. So in the end, it's like playing an instrument. It's relaxed but focused. Relaxed and focused.
lovely. Do you have a favorite systems thinking tool or methodology or reference?
I love the book of Donna Meadows, Thinking in Systems.
Yeah, that's a great one. I love that one as well. And then lastly, what is the leadership quality or mindset that is most needed to nurture systems thinking?
I would come to the VACC. I love these qualities: the visionary, architect, catalyst, and coach.
I love that. That's a great answer. Breeze, thank you so much for joining us and for all the wisdom, but also the mindfulness that you brought. I mean, I literally felt like this was a relaxation session for me, and I'm sure the audience felt that way too. It was very, it leaves me with a lot of optimism and a lot of heart, you know.
Thank you. And thank you for the initiative to bring system thinking into the central stage. It's really much needed.
I really do believe that we all should master that skill. It's I believe it so much that it's in the competency model of people in our company. They have to be good systems
Wonderful.
thinkers. And of course, a great big thank you to our attendees for joining us today and for contributing with questions and feedbacks and thoughts. If you want to share this video with others, you can just give them the link to this LinkedIn page, and later today we'll post it on YouTube and as a podcast episode as well. We are in the last week of the conference, but we are not done yet. I think we have a total of 3 webinars left. And the next one is tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. UAE time. That's Wednesday, October 29th, with Dhiren Bhatia. He's an entrepreneur, an advisor, and a coach, and he's going to take us into how we can build systems that enable leaders to reclaim their time. I, for one, would definitely need some of that advice. And then for those who are in Dubai, we have our final in-person event on this Friday, October 31st. We call it the Leaders Offsite, and we'll explore systems thinking through keynotes, embodied experiences, great conversations with fellow leaders. And if you want to be a part of it, please let us know. Thank you all once again for being with us here today, and see you soon. In the meantime, stay curious.